Hey everybody, it's Jimmy Valentine back with you again with a new review of Mr. Miracle number 5 and Mr. Miracle number 6. And with this comic, we've been given the best and most romantic portrayal of a couple that's together in comics in the last for this century, and also probably one of the best portrayals of a realistic relationship dynamic in fiction. Comic books are very traditional stories in a lot of ways. They're kind of based on archetypes that were from the Middle Ages. A guy goes on an adventure to save a woman or to become a hero, to become worthy of a woman's love. So, that archetype has played out in comics for the last 100 years since comics became its own medium in the way that we perceive it now. The two most famous relationships are Lois Lane and Clark Kent, and then you have Superman, Peter Parker and Mary Jane. So both of these comics are different. Issue 6 is more action orientated. Issue 5 is more of a deconstruction and us living with the characters a little bit. I didn't, as anyone who's watched this channel knows, I didn't really enjoy the first few issues of Mr. Miracle, but I thought the artwork was interesting and they were going for different things. The way the artwork is being used in this issue is very dynamic, especially in issue 5. So we'll have something like this where each of the panels are being used to do one picture. So you have Scott here having intercourse with his spouse, and you get this thing of her of seeing her in different parts in their sexual relationship, and like the little faces that are made, and it feels very much like real life, and it doesn't feel exploitative, and it doesn't feel just like pornography. It really feels like I've had this discussion with people. Really good fiction writing that's about sex and sexuality is supposed to make you uncomfortable because you're seeing the intimacy between two people, and you really feel like you're getting a sense of intimacy between these two people. So what happens is in this issue we get Scott has been declared to be executed for his betrayal, and he's spending one last day with his spouse, and it's kind of the typical thing of like, if you only had a day to spend with your partner, what would you really do? Where would you really go? If you couldn't run away, if it's something you had to face, they go to a carnival together. They go to the beach and they look at the sunset. And it's very nice that they kind of do this out of costume, and it feels much more akin to real life and a genuine dynamic between two people that have been together and dealt with the ups and downs of a relationship. One of my favorite parts in this issue is a part where they talk about they don't really have a song, and the song they have is the tortured screams of their hell planet that they came from. And you really get this sense of people that were thrusted together from not the best circumstances, who've made a life for themselves, who are trying to be there for each other in a realistic and honest way. And it ends in a very dynamic way where Big Barda has had enough, and she attacks the guards. And I would say, if you haven't been on track with Mr. Miracle, it's kind of great to read these issues in tangents. Like if you read 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, they really feel more like one episode of a TV series. Or if you read the individual comics, it's not as much of as an episodic experience where they feel more like parts and not wholes. This issue is very different. The issue 6, it's more of a traditional comic story than they've done on this run. You have the characters together. You have Mr. Miracle and Big Barda together, and they're going through. And I'm going to try to adjust the camera for a second, so bear with me, everybody. They're going through the space together, and they're dealing with, kind of typical science fiction tropes, right? Like there's a laser field and it's this crazy like, you can see all the colors on the screen, and they're fighting people and they're going through like an underwater section, and you really get this sense of like what's kind of great about this is they're just having a typical conversation that a real couple would have about remodeling their home. And it's one of those things where if the writer wasn't as confident as he is, it would feel very trite and very, stereotypical or just like boring. But you really get this sense of like the intimacy of their relationship based on this conversation. And one of the most powerful moments for myself reading this comic was the part where Mr. Miracle talked about how he's acquired all this stuff because when he grew up, he didn't have those things and he wanted those things and he thought it would satisfy himself. But he's learned that in the end, the stuff doesn't satisfy you. It's the people that you choose to spend your life with. And it's something that's really powerful and it's very simple and it doesn't feel saccharine, it doesn't feel overdone. And it's something I think if you're a fan of the genre or you've experienced hardship in your own life and have moved past it, it's very touching and very deftly handled. This sequence is really well done, and I'm hoping the camera will focus for this. So you have this sequence here where Mr. Miracle and Big Barda are fighting these people, and what's great is that the panels kind of act as like doubles in a way. So you're reading them as almost triple panels, right? So if you can see right there. So the experience is it's a story, and you have to kind of look at this almost like 1, 2, and 3. So they kind of play a little bit because they've done this 9-box space, and sometimes it's used very effectively, sometimes it isn't. I'll say for this issue, it's used very well and very effective. Even in this section where they're in a shrinking room, they're kind of in like every kind of trope of being in danger in comics. They're like in a laser room, in a water room, they're fighting guards, they're in a shrinking room. And you would think would be really boring, but the conversation keeps pulling you in. And, I'm not going to do the big spoiler that's in this issue because I want people to read it. Because I felt like it's a little bit like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. One of my favorite sections in that movie was the last 30 minutes where they're fighting they're fighting the people from their agency, and they're gonna get assassinated, and they're still kind of talking about like basic domestic stuff, and it's kind of a nice thing of like you could be in the most fantastical world, but you're still gonna have to pay your bills, and you're still gonna have to remodel your house at some point, and it's very nice and it's very intimate and it feels very lived in. And I would highly recommend both issues. It's definitely the best writing that's happening in comics right now. It's the most honest. And the thing is, the reason so much struggle has happened in the comic industry for the last 3-4 years has been the writers that have been hired. Their failing is not treating their characters with intelligence and respect. You have to treat your characters with intelligence and respect for the audience to respect your characters. Your characters can have flaws, they can be difficult, they can fail. But if they don't take their situation seriously, why should the audience take it seriously? And what Mr. Miracle's done is they've taken this very fantastical world and really made the reader feel the reality and the weight of it. And you really feel the intimacy and the love. And it's in a way that's not overdone or overcomplicated. I love Alan Moore. I think he's a genius, but he's one of those people that can pontificate too much. And what this writing does is it takes that Alan Moore style and kind of boil it to the essence where you feel more of the emotion and not so much the philosophy. So I would highly recommend both these issues. If you're not on Mr. Miracle, it's definitely something fun to read. I think it's important to support monthly comics and monthly comic places. I like trades. I use trades to check out certain writers and certain characters I don't know much about. I take out trades from the library myself, but I try to buy a few issues each month because I really feel that the culture of comics is very rich. There's a lot of interesting online discussion, and I feel like it's a good price point for an experience because beyond making the video, you get 30 minutes of entertainment for $3 to $4, and it's something that I feel like you can pass on to your kids and pass on to your friends, and it's really you put in the value to it. Ultimately, this stuff will not be. There's never going to be another Batman #1 or Superman #1 where you're going to be able to retire from it. But the value is in the culture and in the camaraderie that you get from doing this, and not just taking stuff from Comixology or from Tumblr. All right, everybody, peace. I hope you enjoyed this.